Hey guys, Kevin, and I know I stopped reviewing the Vampire Diaries a while ago, and I want to explain why. As you guys know, I reviewed episode 1 to 16 of season 7, and then episode 1 to 17, and then just kind of stopped. I stopped. I basically just stopped investing my time. Really, I was just like, you know what? I'll just wait till it ends, and I figured that the show's not really going anywhere. I'm just gonna watch the rest of the episodes and then review till the season ends. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna review episodes 18 to 22 and basically give you my thoughts on it, give you my thoughts on the season after all. Guys, you know my thoughts on the season overall. You already know how I feel the season. Just the fact that I stopped reviewing the show in the middle of the season, when I've always reviewed the Vampire Diaries every episode, it's one of my most consistent shows on this channel, should tell you how I felt about this season. I will talk about that at the end of this video, but let's just get into these episodes, because here's the thing. There's a lot that happens in this episode, but just like the rest of the season, it doesn't really amount to much of anything, really. So let's just get into it, starting off with episode 18, which I did think was an okay episode. I did like a lot of things that happened in this episode. There was some really good stuff here. The main conflict, of course, is getting Stefan out of Marty's body, and then getting Stefan out of Marty's body, and then at the same time trying to get Ambrose out of Stefan's body. And at first, you don't really know if this is going to work, and like I said, this was a pretty good plot, the way this was done, having Stefan in Marty's body, and then having Stefan as Ambrose, especially as Ambrose, you really got to see Paul Wesley's, acting ability, him playing this evil-like presence. I mean, we've already seen it when he played Silas, but this isn't Stefan, this is Ambrose, and I think they did a good job with that, but just like all the other characters this season, Ambrose and Marty aren't really that compelling to me. Ambrose just obviously wants to take over the body and just, corrupt Stefan and basically therefore ruin kind of like his reputation, things like that. While Marty is dying, as we know. And the interesting part of this conflict, what I felt was the most interesting part, is that Marty is dying and they only have 24 hours to return him to get Stefan out of his body, or else Stefan's just gonna die. And that actually ends up being very intense and a really well done scene. I really did like the way this was done. There was actually some really good stuff here, and the way that Reyna tried to stop him. We could see that Ambrose, obviously, he was also very affected by Reyna and everything, but again, it's all told to us. It's not shown to us, it's just told. And I've said it before, show not tell. The show is best when it shows us things and not just tells us things. It's not as effective as when we hear about something and then when we're shown something, especially when we are hearing about something, it's from a character that we really haven't seen much of. And Ambrose, they tried to get us to sympathize with him and try to get us to show why he is the way he is and kind of get us behind this guy, and it just never really works. For me, at least, it didn't work. Maybe it worked for you guys, but to me, it never worked really here. Meanwhile, Valerie is like, victoriously trying to search for Stefan. She has no idea where he is, and luckily, we know that, obviously, they need a witch, and, Valerie decides to step in, and luckily, she is able to save Stefan. Let's just make a long story short, she is able to save Stefan, luckily, which it takes, actually, a long time for them to get there. There's this whole process where Bonnie has to see this girl, Virginia, give her these pills that she made and everything. I mean, there's a very long process here with what's going on. We also have the armories after Bonnie. This just never really went anywhere. One, because I never really care about the Bonnie and Enzo relationship. I just never really saw it. Two, the armory for me never was that compelling. The whole Alex situation, all there. You guys know that's my weakest stuff with this season. Everything that's happened with Enzo, I've never really found him that compelling of a character. I still don't find him that compelling of a character. And this didn't make him any more of a compelling character. The only time Enzo stuff really worked were like the last few episodes of the season, which we'll get into. But basically, make a long story short, Valerie is able to save Stefan, luckily, which I thought was really quick, but it made sense, because this plot could not go on for too much longer. We knew, obviously, he only had 24 hours, it definitely seemed like this plot was ending, but I will say that this ends up being one of the best arcs of the season. Why? Because it felt complete. It felt like a completed arc. It felt like something that had the time it needed to develop it. Even though I didn't really care about Ambrose, I do think they did a good job with this plot. I just don't really see the point of it, really. What was really the point in switching Stefan's body? I don't really know why this happened exactly. I'm trying to remember, and I still don't really remember why this all happened. Oh yeah, because Stefan got trapped in the armor, as in the Infinity Stone, as we know, that's where he got trapped in from Reyna, but it just never really went much of anywhere, except that Damon wants to save Stefan, which we've pretty much seen. But then we actually get, I think, a really great scene here where Valerie basically admits that she knows that Stefan really is in love with Caroline, that the two of them just aren't really working, and they're not really much of a couple, and she says that she wants to leave, and she understands that maybe he kind of had feelings for her, but they're just not really working. She thinks the best thing to do is for them to break up, and that's exactly what happens. Valerie and Stefan do break up, which I was happy about because they never were working as a couple for me. Those two, I never felt that dynamic. I never felt like they were a couple. It felt like a plot that they simply started to get Caroline and Stefan away from each other, and it never really worked, especially Stefan and Alaric. We'll get to that part as well. Valerie and Stefan do break up. Valerie ends up leaving the show, and I genuinely was I felt that emotion. I really did. I genuinely did feel something when Valerie left. I think it was a very effective scene, probably because the actress who plays Valerie is a very good actress. I can't think of her name right now, but she's a very good actress, and I like the way that was done. Really good stuff there. I did think they ended that really well. I definitely really did enjoy that, and basically, the end of the episode, though, we see Damon. He goes to see Bonnie because he knows that Bonnie is back, and obviously we know that Bonnie really wants nothing to do with Damon. That's shown very well when she basically slams the door right in his face, wanting nothing to do with him. So that's pretty much everything that happens in episode 17. There's really not much else to talk about. That's pretty much everything that happens there. Episode 18. Now let's get into episode 19, which was, again, a fairly low-key episode that I feel like could have been a lot more. The plot of episode 19 is pretty simple. Damon knows that Raina has this plan to take out pretty much, she's this huntress and she wants to take out all these vampires. So Damon comes up with this really simple plan, which I think is a very good plan, to basically not sacrifice them and actually use them by getting a hit squad to actually do that work for her. And that's what she decides to do. We see Damon, Bonnie, and Enzo. They each take out these vampires. But again, it just doesn't really go anywhere because, one, the Bonnie and Damon plot never really goes in the direction I wanted to. I really wanted to see more of Bonnie and Damon Disney, and they did a good job with that, I will say. They did some good jobs with the flashbacks, like us seeing Bonnie and the envelope from Damon, she throws in a box, just little things like that. Seeing that Bonnie really is just shut him out of her life, and she really wants nothing to do with him. She's never forgiven him for leaving her. That's why Bonnie's upset. It's not because of the fact that Damon left, it's the fact that he did it without really getting her consent, and the fact that she really didn't want him to leave, and she wasn't ready for him to leave. And it is not because Bonnie loves Damon. I never felt like this is a relationship. I've always seen it as a friendship, and I think they still made a friendship, which I'm happy about. I don't need this to be a relationship. I want it to be a friendship, and I think it's good that they stuck it as a friendship because they really need to make it that way. Thought there was some really good stuff there. But like I said, most of this episode is them just taking out vampires and Bonnie and Damon trying to move past their differences. It doesn't really seem to be working. You can tell this is kind of Damon's way of trying to get through to Bonnie and trying to show that he's still there for her, but it's just not really going. And then meanwhile, we see Alaric and Stefan. They're trying to get through things as well, which is interesting. The scenes between Alaric and Stefan, where Alaric, we can see, is really mad that Stefan left and everything and things like that. That Stefan, left town. He talks about him and Caroline. And again, they just don't really do much of anything. And at the end of the episode, Caroline does, in fact, return. How? I don't really know. They never really revealed how Caroline was, no longer kidnapped and, how she was able to get away. We never really saw that, but basically, she's there. Stefan is stunned. Caroline tells Alaric they just got back, and they hear the girls. Alaric offers to put them to bed, but she says she's got it, kisses his cheek, and goes upstairs. Alaric shuts the door in Stefan's face, and Alaric then gets a call from that, and Stefan takes a call from Damon. And basically, we find out at the end of this episode that Raina has added more names to this list, and there are a lot more names, and Raina basically seems to screw them over. She screws them over even more, though, in the next episode, which I thought was one of the better episodes of these 5, definitely. I really enjoyed episode 20, actually. There are a lot of things that don't work in this episode, but there are a lot of things that do in fact work, and definitely I saw a lot of those things that did work and a lot of things that didn't work, and I'll get into both of those things. Episode 20 really gets more into everyone's past and things like that, especially Matt's. We really find out a lot more about Matt and the specific reason why he wants to go after Stefan and what's going on there. Basically, we find out, of course, Matt and Penny, we knew something happened there. Essentially, Penny was murdered. Penny had died that night, and there were vampires out there, and Matt suspects that Stefan is the one that killed Penny. He keeps trying to tell her that's not him, but it's a really effective scene. You do see that Matt generally thinks this, and you just see that really, Matt just can't really do this anymore. Mystic Falls really isn't a place for Matt anymore. Now he has this looming spirit of Penny. It's just not really a place that he wants to be, and you do kind of feel bad for this guy. I think they did a good job with that. I really did like seeing that, and I definitely did like that overall. Meanwhile, we see that Enzo and Damon, they decide to come up with another deal for Reina. And this deal, I think, is a little bit more absurd, but maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Again, I think it's a little bit more absurd than some of the other stuff here. This idea is basically to sacrifice Reina and let Bonnie have Reina's powers, for whatever reason, because they want Bonnie to be as powerful as Reina, so that's what they decided to do, is basically have Bonnie be as powerful. And again, Reina just never was that interesting. Reina, to me, always seemed like a low-key villain. Like, she was supposed to be the main threat, she was very low-key and laid back, and it just didn't do much of anything. It seemed like she was more of a Catherine. But Catherine was a badass. Catherine had goals. Catherine did things on her own. Reina never seemed like she had an actual goal rather than just to take out every vampire that there is, because that's simply her job. It never really seemed like she did much of anything else. I really wasn't a huge fan of this, and we do find out though that the vampire was in fact Stefan that took out Penny, and we even, especially when he goes to Sheriff Forbes' grave, says that he was hoping Caroline might show. Stefan says that he wouldn't hurt Penny, and the vampire chooses then to attack them. Stefan kills the vampire with a power saw, and it's a really effective scene. I like the way that was done. I like that Alaric and Caroline as well, they have to take out some vampires. I mean, just again, I just never really felt that this was a conclusive plot. I never really felt like it was going much of anywhere, and I just felt like this was a random thing. Like, Damon just proposed this deal, and it just didn't really seem like it goes anywhere, and it actually does go somewhere, though, this episode, which I'm happy with. I'm glad that this actually did go somewhere, because by the end of the episode, we realize that Reina has tricked them. Reina does, in fact, die in this episode. I just didn't really care. I gotta say, I did not care that Reina died at all. In fact, probably one of the most low-key deaths of this season, because everything about Reina is very low-key, and I don't like that at all. But Reina does die, but what she didn't tell them is all of her evil and all of her ideals and everything that she believed goes right into Bonnie. Bonnie is now evil, and Bonnie is now the main threat of the season. Now, in theory, I do think that this kind of works. Why? Because Bonnie essentially is very against everyone. We know she has a hatred for Dame right now because he left her. We know that she's really mad at Enzo for the armory and all that he's done. We know that Caroline, she doesn't really have a reason to be mad at her, but she still has a reason for a lot of her friends just abandoning her, because let's face it, how many people have abandoned Bonnie? Bonnie is probably the character on the show that gets abandoned the most. She's the most alone, and it's about time that she does go after her friends. Problem is, I do think this happened, like, way too late. I do think this should have happened a couple scenes ago. I think it would have been really interesting if they did that. Especially last season, you could have resurrected Bonnie and have her come back as, like, this evil witch, and they just didn't really have that opportunity to do that, I guess. I mean, maybe they were focused on Kai. Now, Kai was awesome. Kai's probably one of the best villains the show's ever had. I definitely will say that. But Bonnie, the badass, does work to a degree. You just don't really believe it. I never really felt like this was actually Bonnie. I mean, some of her things I did understand. Like, a lot of what she's saying, she's not wrong about. Like, the reason why she wants to take out Damon, I understood. But a lot of this episode is in Bonnie's hell, and you know what's going on isn't actually happening. Bonnie's not waking up. They're all really worried because they know when she's going to wake up, she's going to try to go after them, and they're trying to do whatever they can to make sure that she doesn't wake up. And there's some very good scenes here where they don't really know what to do. They don't really know what to save her, because they don't really know. They've never been through something like this before. They don't really know how to save Bonnie from this. And it's a really good scene. I did like the scenes we saw there. Meanwhile, this episode, we see Matt's trying to find out more about Penny and see if, that Stefan basically does tell Matt that he killed Penny, and Damon says that he played hero and everything, and that he did, in fact, confess that he was the one that killed Penny. But you can tell that this really does break Matt a bit. I mean, Matt, through the rest of the season, he never feels like himself, which I did think was probably the best arc we had, and one of the best arcs we've had this entire season, is that Matt just doesn't feel safe in Mystic Falls. He always feels out of place. He doesn't feel like it's a place for him anymore. For him, this is a place of hell. This is a place of brokenness. This is a broken town. This is a broken job. I mean, everything for him is just missed opportunity after missed opportunity. He was going to get married to Penny. He was. We find out in this episode that he was. We find out in the last episode that he was planning on marrying Penny, but unfortunately, she was killed, and now it just... I like that he isn't really going after Stefan. He knows that he can't really do it because it's not his battle to be won, and pretty much the rest of the season, we really do see Matt struggling with this. He doesn't really know what to do, and basically, Matt keeps saying, oh, I'm going to take care of it, I'm going to take care of it, but you know that Matt really, there's not really much he can do. I mean, he can't take on Stefan, he's not immortal, he can't really take him out, it's just not going to work in the way that Matt wants it to, and I think Matt knows that he understands why Stefan went after Penny and what was going on there. I do understand that, But basically, we do see throughout this episode they're trying to get Bonnie not to wake up, and it does for the most part work. I do think there were some really good scenes here, and there is some good stuff here with Alaric and Caroline that I did really like overall. But basically, a lot of it is just repetitive stuff from the last episode. Alaric saying that Stefan is still in love with her, that she still wants to be with Stefan. We basically get the same scene 3 times in episodes 20, 21, and 22. And no point in any of these scenes do they actually feel like a real couple. What this seems like is an idea that the writers had that just never really worked. Alaric and Caroline seems like a stretch. It seems silly, and it is silly. It never really has worked for me. It's never really gone much of anywhere, and I've never really been into Alaric and Caroline. I've never seen them as a real couple. I've never really seen them as something that actually worked this season, and here it kind of works in the sense that you understand that Caroline wanted them to be like a normal family, and they can never be like that normal family. That part of the show works really well, is the fact that they want to be this normal family, but they can't because their daughters themselves are full with magic, and there's never going to be that family that they want to be. And I thought there was some really good stuff. There's a really good scene with Caroline and Stefan where she gets mad at him. But again, that doesn't really go anywhere. You can tell it's more of Stefan wanting to just say things to Caroline and basically apologize to her, but it just, again, it's stupid. I'm not really a huge fan of it, and basically we then see, after this, that Damon does actually thinks that he's there to think of her fighting the good fights, and he jumps into Bonnie's brain, and this scene I thought was great. The best scenes in this episode I thought were the ones in Bonnie's brain, because she really gets to deal with a lot of the stuff that she's going through, and we basically see that, he says that he's there to think of her fighting the good fight and dying so we can have Elena back, and basically she gives him this deal that, I thought was very interesting, and definitely I like the deal here. That basically he says that Bonnie screwed up, now they're here, she can give up the ghost, he can have Elena back, and suddenly Damon wants Elena back, and it's dumb. It really is. One, because you know they're not going to kill off Kat Graham. She's already said that she's on for next season, which is the last season. Thank God it is the last season. But Bonnie is still going to be on next season, so you know they're not going to kill her off. So again, this just doesn't really work. I mean, it kind of works in theory, but it just never really works as a whole. And the episode ends. I do like the way this episode ends with them not really knowing how to save Bonnie. They don't really know what to do. Damon realizes that they have to open up the vault and find the everlasting and save her because it's the only way they can do that. And we don't know what's in that vault. We're hearing about the vault all season. We don't really know what's in there, and that pretty much is where we end episode 21. And now, guys, we're getting into the finale, which if you guys haven't seen the finale, I am going to spoil it again. But just like the rest of the season, there isn't really much to talk about here. There's not a whole bunch of things that really happen. I mean, there are things toward the end of the season that really do make me interested in the last season next year, but again, just not really going much of anywhere. Most of this episode is Damon and Enzo trying to figure out how to cure Bonnie, how to get her out of this, and once again, doesn't really do much of anything, really. I mean, we see that Bonnie, obviously, she's hot on the trail. She almost kills Enzo in this episode, but I thought it was a very effective scene, what we did see with her basically realizing, that she can't kill Enzo, having that moment where she does wake up and realize what she's really doing. It actually was a good moment. Even though Bonnie and Enzo never really worked for me, I do think that it did overall work. I definitely really did like that. I thought there were some really good scenes there. And that's something that I definitely really did enjoy. Is where we did see at that moment where Bonnie does wake up. Bonnie begs him to fight her off, says sorry. Enzo says it's okay, then asks her not to remember this moment, but the others instead. And it really is a good scene. We see Bonnie's about to kill him, and he lights him, and basically Damon does get to the vault. He lights him as he burns by the everlasting that he found, and Bonnie's able to stop. Enzo's alive. They save Bonnie. I kind of want Enzo to die, though, honestly. Enzo has not worked for me all season. He seems like the one character that never should have really been a series regular, and they just kind of made him a series regular because his first episode where he was introduced was really interesting, but he just never has really had anything that great since then, and I kind of feel like this was the time to kill off Enzo. They, of course, didn't kill Enzo, but whatever. I do think some of this really worked. I do think it was a good ending for that, and honestly, it did feel kind of emotional. I did like the scene where Bonnie wakes up and realizes what she did, the beast within her, what she's been doing. She finally gets that moment where she gets to wake up, and it's a really nice moment. I did like seeing that. It seems like Bonnie is now on good terms with everyone, so I did like seeing that. We also got this really good scene, though, with Damon and Stefan, which I will say is one thing this season that I don't really think the writers taking advantage of. Let's think about what they could have done this season. with Elena out of the show, they should have focused a lot more on Stefan and Damon. The problem was throughout this entire season, these two were divided, and they were always doing separate things. Stefan was always doing this, while Damon was always doing this, and that always pissed me off. I thought throughout the entire season, these two should be working together. Now, we did have some moments, but finally in this episode, we finally get a moment where these two really seem like they understand each other, and basically Stefan apologizes for everything he said to Damon and how he wanted to go after him, and how he thought that he'd be better without him and things like that. And it is a very good scene, and I like what Stefan tells Damon, that he can't let those past decisions affect him, because it's clear that those things really do affect Damon, and those things really do, really make him the way he is. And I like that Stefan's telling him, don't let this affect you. Don't let this affect you. Don't let this make it seem like it's something that you need to do. And then we get that really dumb scene, though, after this, where Damon goes to the vault, thinks he hears Elena's voice, and is now trapped in the vault because he thought that it was Elena. Let's talk about this, because we have not heard about Elena. We've heard about her a little bit all season, but it never has seemed like Damon really wants to get her back. I think he's kind of just accepted the fact that she's going to wake up eventually, but now it seems like he hasn't accepted that fact, and this was a really dumb scene. To me, it just seemed like it was the way to keep Elena in the show, because they don't actually fully ever want to get rid of her, because Nia Dover said she's coming back next season, which is cool, but they just never really moved on from it, and that is when you know a show really should have just ended, because they haven't moved on from it. They haven't moved on from Melina not being there. Now, obviously, Nia Dover is not really on the show anymore. Like I said, she might come back in the finale. I do think she said she is coming back in the finale, definitely. But this just felt out of place. I thought it was dumb. I thought all the stuff we got there, I really was not a fan of. And then Enzo going to save Damon. I mean, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? The vaults... There clearly is something there that messes with your mind, that clearly makes you think there's something down there, but we don't know what that is. And that is something I'm interested in seeing, is what is down that vault? What is making Damon think that it's Elena? What is it really? I mean, that's something that I'm definitely very interested in. Hopefully that villain is a lot more compelling than any of the other villains we've had, because that's been my main problem this season, that none of the villains, I mean, think about it. We went from Lily to Julian to Raina to now Bonnie, and none of those villains ever seemed like they had a conclusive arc. None of them did. I mean, not a single one of them. I felt that arc. I felt like I knew why they were doing this. All of them just felt very half-assed. It seemed like stuff that they tried to write, and then they just realized this wasn't working anymore, so they just killed it, and it happened every single time this season. And that's not what you do. You need a conclusive arc. Lily wasn't working, so quickly they made her the good guy. Then Julian wasn't working, so they killed him off because no one really cared about him. Raina wasn't working out from the beginning, so she just left, and I never really felt like Raina was working. And then Bonnie, they had 2 episodes to do this. I mean, do you really think this was going to work? In theory, like I said, this could work, but again, they had 3 episodes, and there really wasn't much they could do with that because they had to conclude the season. And again, I never really felt like Bonnie going dark was that great of a direction for the show. Now, surprisingly, really not surprisingly at all, Caroline and Laurie do break up, but it does give them basically gave Stefan and Caroline this chance to talk, and it just, again, doesn't really seem like going much of anywhere. It doesn't really seem like they're on good terms or anything. I mean, they do get that really good scene, which I enjoyed overall. I thought there was some good stuff there between Caroline and Stefan, but Stefan never gets to tell Caroline what he really wants to say. It seems like these two are just friends right now, which I think is fine, but I honestly did like these two together. They never seemed like a couple. Alaric and Caroline as well. I mean, notice they never kissed. That's something I noticed, that these two never kissed. They always hugged, and it was always weird. Like, it always felt weird. And of course, it's weird for Caroline because this is the basically father figure of her best friend that's in a coma right now, so there's that as well. But there's also the fact that it's fucking Alaric, and it just hasn't really worked at all. I mean, I've never really seen it working all that much, really. For me, it just never really worked that much at all. And then I did like the way things ended this season. I thought that narration was really dumb. I understand the show's called The Vampire Diaries, but that is just really pushing. Having every single character narrates like the part of their lives we did not need to see. Again, it's a perfect example of show not tell. I don't need to hear directly what they're doing. I could have just seen a montage where Matt leaves town, which clearly he's leaving because it's not the place for him anymore. And I hope that Matt leaves permanently. I don't want to see him in Mystic Falls anymore. I mean, his life is just getting worse and worse. The best thing for Matt to do is to just leave and not come back. I think it's the best thing for him. No one one really is going to miss him. No one really cares, really. No one really seems to want to help him. I mean, it kind of seems like it's not really the place for him anymore. And I felt that all season, that Matt, it seemed like they were going to do something with him this season, and now I like that he's gotten away because he's never really felt like he's needed to be here. Go with the originals, honestly. That seems more like the place from his New Orleans, maybe there. Obviously, it's more corrupt there, but it seems like that's more the place from. I could definitely see him going there. And we do know they've already said that a lot of the characters from Vampire Diaries will go on to the originals once Vampire Diaries ends. And I do think Matt is going to be one of those characters. We'll have to see what happens with that. That's going to be very interesting. But basically, we do see that basically Caroline tells Stefan that Damon's like a cockroach and will survive. Caroline says that she has things to say. That Damon texts and she gets the burn ready. Damon asks what she has to say. Caroline says that she lied and there's a thaw. He steps closer, kisses her, and it seems like Caroline and Stefan are back together. I'm not really sure. They didn't really exactly say, but like I said, it does seem like these two are back together, and that's interesting. So then we end this season, like I said, with these little diary entries from everyone. We talk about how Caroline says she lost the two people closest to them. She can't find because Bonnie's magic is gone, and I do like that. I like that Bonnie's magic is gone, but come on, we've been through this before. We know this is not going to last forever. We know that Bonnie's going to get that magic back. She didn't have magic in, I believe, season 5, and she got it back very quickly, so I don't think this is going to be forever. Damon and Enzo, though, they're trapped in this vault. There are a bunch of bodies in there. We don't know what's down in the vault, but clearly they're in this warehouse that's full of bodies, and we don't know why this is going on. That's very interesting, what's going to happen there. I did really like Stefan's entry where he talks about how he doesn't know what they're doing or why, what they really have planned, because they don't really know this is going to work. With Bonnie not having her magic back, they don't really know if they're going to be able to get Damon and Enzo back. They're hoping that they can, but they don't really know if that's going to work. And that's pretty much how the season ends. Alaric, of course, he cracked the security code. They went inside. The vault was empty. The caves are abandoned, and it seems like they're trapped there. We don't know if they're going to come back. We don't know how they're going to come out of this. That is how we end this season, and I think it was a good ending. I do think it was a good ending overall. I think there was some really dumb stuff, like Damon thinking he was hearing Elaine. I mean, did you really think that Elaine would be in here? Her body is in. I mean, the dumbest part of that scene is that throughout the entire scene, Enzo was like, no, it felt like a comedy. It really did. It was so dumb. I hated the way this was done. With Enzo and Bonnie being like, her body is in a warehouse. Why are you going there? It was so dumb. Why did Damon ever think that Elena was there? I don't know why he thought that. I don't know why he would think that she'd wake up. Bonnie's not dead, so Elena's not alive. Did we not establish that if Bonnie dies, Elena wakes up? Bonnie's not dead. Elena's, going to sleep. That is how it is going to work. And I don't know why Damon thought there was another way out of that, because there isn't. There's no other way. That is how it was from the beginning, and there really is no other difference. I mean, that's what it was from the beginning, is that Bonnie was this way, Elena was this way, and it's going to stay that way until Bonnie dies, which we know is going to happen because Kat Graham's leaving the show, as is everyone, because next season's the last season. Alright. Enough of my raging. Let's get into this season. Look, there were a lot of things that could have happened this season. I honestly thought in the beginning of the season, this would be a really good season. It seemed like they had a lot more simpler focus. It seemed like there was a lot less to focus on. And, there was a lot more room for character development, especially between Stefan and Damon. They just never realized it. They never realized what they could do with this season. They kind of just bullshitted, and it really just seemed like they were testing things out. This was a test season. It was really to see if this show could go on, which I don't really think it can. I'm glad they're ending it next season, because this really just isn't working anymore. The show, it's come so close to the end that it needs to end. I mean, season 8 needs to be the last season. It's real simple. Season 8's not the last season. I'm done with the show. I'm ending after next season. I can't take another season of this. It's not that the season was bad. It wasn't. It was just very pointless. I never felt like this is why I'm watching this show. This is why this show is still going on. It never felt that way. When you watch a show, you should feel like this is what is really going on. This is the point of this plot. I never felt that. I feel like, we just need a villain, so we put this character in. It didn't work, and we did that, and there really weren't that many arcs this season that really work. The only arcs that really worked for me were Damon and Bonnie. Everything there I thought was great. I never really thought they did anything bad with Damon and Bonnie. I thought most of their stuff was really good. The Stefan, Traveler thing, I thought that was good. I thought the way they handled all that was really well done. I did like some of the stuff they did with Lily in the early part of the season, but again, it just never really amounted to anything. And Damon and Stefan in the Infinity Stone, that was the best part of the season, is them in that Infinity Stone. They got out way too quickly, and the thing with this season is that they ended plots before they even started. That really is my biggest problem with this season, that most of the plots of the season ended before they actually started, and they never felt like they actually ended. Even in the finale, there were things that felt like they could have gone on longer, For example, have Bonnie evil for longer. I would have been fine with that. They could have done more with that, really. But of course, no. Kill off Enzo. No. I mean, the show just seems like it's afraid of sticking to, not changing things up. But I've showed you guys, I told you guys before, in shows, I like that when shows do that. I like it when shows don't stick to the norm. This show didn't need to do that. This show really seemed like it could have been a different kind of show, and it never was. This never felt like the Vampire Diaries. It felt like a more weighed down B-movie version of Vampire Diaries. It never really felt that way. For me, this season was a bust. Maybe it was just a bad season, though, honestly. I am going into next season having this hope that it is going to be better, and let me just say this. Season 6, in theory, was not as bad as this because there was some really good stuff in Season 6. This season, like I said, had a lot of potential. It just never really fully realized it. And for me, that is why this season really was just a disappointment. I never really cared as much. It was always the show that I'm like, I'm dreading this. I don't really want to watch this, but I'm sticking to the end. And that is what I'm going to continue to do. I want to see other show ones that I have watched ever since season 1 when I binged it. Season 2 is really when I started watching, but season 1 is when I binged it. But overall, guys, the most guys saw this season. Love to hear your thoughts on it. I know a lot of people stopped watching the show. I don't blame you, honestly. I don't blame you for stop watching the show, especially when there's so much good stuff going on in the originals, which I'm going to talk about next, and that will be my next review. But overall, guys, the most guys saw this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next review, which will be for the originals, which I have a lot more to say about that. I'm sorry I stopped reviewing the show. I just didn't care. I didn't feel like it was a show that I needed to review every week. It just felt kind of pointless. I mean, every week it felt like a filler episode because they just weren't really going anywhere. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, guys. What do you think of this season? How can they make next season better? I don't really know. What is in that vault? What is the looming spirit in that vault? Is Bonnie going to get her magic back? What's going to happen there? Is Matt leaving town for good? I hope he does. I think having Matt on the show, not on the show, will create a lot less dumb stuff. I hope Enzo dies because I've never really cared about that character at all. Overall, guys, most guys saw this season. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Like I said, for me, this season was a bust. I was not a fan of it, and I'm not going to try to sugarcoat. This season kind of sucked. It really did. I really was not a huge fan of it. I wanted more from this season. I never really got that. I will see you guys next video, though, which will be for the originals, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, and of course, guys, like I said, I will be reviewing next season. Next season's the last season, thank God, and I will see you guys next season. So we'll see what happens next season. I will see you guys next video, which will be for the originals, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.